Today is Mike Chen, so hopefully their viewers can come along too.
Sure.
But yeah, anyway, to start off, we have because this is going to be recorded anyway. To start off, just some questions we have here is, how did you make the transition from being a nurse to software developer? I know you and I had a 15-minute coffee chat before, but hopefully we can really dive deep now for, a little longer.
Yeah. That's a great question, and I'm just laughing because I remember like a lot of my coworkers at the time were like, "What are you doing? Like, you're going into tech? That's crazy." And even now, coworkers in tech being like, "You were a nurse? That's crazy." So yeah, it was quite the move. Really like two opposite sides of what you could possibly be doing. But very very long story short, I was really burned out. I was working in a step down ICU, which is like an ICU, but with a lot of patients who might get discharged or moved off of ICU care sooner than later. It's just hard. It's just a rough place, and this was even pre-pandemic, and it's only gotten worse. Like, my wife is still a nurse. So I still hear a lot of the stories and the same things and stuff. But very long story short, all that to say, I was very burned out. I was just like ready to make a switch.
Right. Because nursing's both like emotionally and physically like draining.
Yeah. It's definitely physically draining, emotionally draining. I mean, you're pulling these 12-hour shifts, especially when you're working, bedside nursing. I all that to say, I did enjoy that career quite a bit. Like, I don't think I would have gone through like 4-ish years of school to become a nurse, and then doing you have to take this giant test called the NCLEX just to
Right.
Get your license. And it was, I think it was like a very like altruistic, beautiful like kind of career field that a lot of people like find a lot of fulfillment in. For me, it was just not the right path. I just don't think I had the I don't think I had quite the emotional capacity at the time. Like, I had a very hard time seeing people like suffering and stuff. But that's all the sad things. That's all the like, it was hard in
Okay,
a lot
so
of
with,
ways.
with that being said, what parts of nursing do you feel like you have leverage as a software engineer?
Yeah. Yeah, good question. I think somebody asked me that in another interview, and I thought it was just a fascinating question because it's something I thought a lot about when I first made, my career transition. And they had asked me in, my interviews and technical interviews, like, oh, like what was like being nursing like, and like how would you use those skills and stuff. I definitely think it gives you a lot of like very strong social skills and ability to kind of like read a room. And like, I mean, you just in nursing, you just got to be able to like walk into a room and be like, hey, like what's going on? Like, is this a dangerous situation? Is this like a high stress family thing going on? Is this or even like read, like physically what's going on? Like, oh, this person is passed out or something. So you get very good at, just having like a strong intuition and ability to like quickly scan like what's happening in a moment. I think that served me very well in tech, not only from like the social aspect, but also just, there's a lot of problem solving involved in that. Like, you walk into a room in, a step down ICU, and there might be 5, 6, 10 bags of IV fluids going at once. And you got to like pretty quickly immediately be like, okay, this is what this is. This is what this is. This is what this fluid is or whatever. And it's funny in tech, like, programming, you get a lot of that as well. Like, oh, there's this dependency. Oh, there's this, button that does this thing on the website, this line of, code that does that. So I think there's the problem solving aspect and this kind of like very strong critical thinking thing that you had to have. Like, it's hard to describe the critical thinking in medicine. Like,
Right. No, I understand.
yeah.
Most of my sisters are all nurses, and my
Oh,
dad
that's right.
was
Yeah.
also in healthcare. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
I'm
think, I
sure
think
to
that's,
other people watching, it is, I feel like you develop it over time to assess a room.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that served me very well. I actually, at one point, I was put on a client project that was doing like it was like a medical startup, and that was actually just good knowledge that since I was in that industry that I got to use as well. So that's another thing I tell people a lot is that like your skills and your like current experiences are extremely valuable to future current employers. Like I've met with people before who are like, I'm an accountant, and I'm like, you can do programming at your job currently. You could do like some Excel programming or something, or some like data automation stuff or data entry automation, and that's like really valuable stuff. That's like applicable today if you're trying to break into tech, right? So yeah, it was a little weird in nursing. I couldn't really be doing programming at the bedside.
Right.
But yeah, try to find, I tell people that a lot, that there's, you have current skills that are useful and valuable, and you can definitely apply to breaking into your tech career.
Amazing. Exactly. And, for someone like you who have successfully done it yourself and now a senior engineer, I hope, this can be an inspiration to a lot of people, especially during the pandemic.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law was also an ICU nurse. He quit bedside just to do like remote work, some kind of consultation, because it was just a lot for him to handle. So I'm glad you got out of it before COVID hit.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a wild world. Yeah, my wife is still a nurse. I still hear a lot of the crazy stories. Big oof. It's a challenge for sure.
Yeah. I'm glad she, you have your own set of skills and she has her own set of skills to flourish in whatever space that you like.
Yeah.
And another question from the audience for here was a favorite thing about a software engineer you didn't expect.
That I didn't expect. Yeah. I'm just a huge dork, honestly. Like, I didn't really expect, I really fell in love with it. I guess all that to say, I didn't really expect to, go so headfirst into so many like little nitty gritty things that, I think, require a lot of patience and a lot of like, really enjoying that thing that you're kind of pulling the thread on. For example, I'm building a client library for Go in NeoVim, which is honestly disgusting. Like if I have to like take just a quick step back and be like, this is really gross and it's kind of terrible. But for some reason I enjoy it, and yeah, I didn't quite expect to fall in love with it so much. It's been great.
That's great. And I know you're an advocate of open source as well. Do you want to share some of that experience and some of the challenges and like the best things about those spaces?
Yeah. Oh, open source. I love open source software. I think it's, this kind of beautiful kind of melting pot of like all these like public things that have, somehow made it into people's, hearts and minds. But no, really, it's, it's a great place for, people wanting to break into tech to contribute like real production code to real things. So like, I work primarily in the Kubernetes ecosystem of tools and things. That ecosystem is huge. And, it's kind of wild that it's primarily run by open source contributors. Granted, there's a lot of companies that are also pumping engineering resources into those projects as well. But, that's all out in the open source. That's all out there kind of in the wild for people to use, take the code, license pending, right? And do with it what they will. And I think that's just such a beautiful place of innovation to kind of, it's kind of scary too. Like I've open source things before, and I've had people be like, you suck. And I'm like, I'm sorry for just, giving you this code for free. So, some rough edges, granted, just like any online open community or anything. But, at the same time, I've had people like fork projects or contribute back to my code base, and that innovation continues to kind of stack on top of each other. A philosophy that I really love, that I think applies really well here, is this idea that, I can only see as far as I can see because I stand on the backs of giants. And that's open source. Like, you look at Linux, and all of Linux is just stacked on top of each other of these like absolute giants of computer science, and people 20, 30 years back building these operating systems and these tools. And hey, now today I can download Pop! OS and put it on my machine, and it's beautiful and it's great and it works really, really well, and it's free and it's open source. So That's my that's kind of my philosophy department hot take on open source. But yeah, I love it. I think open source is just an amazing way for people to get involved in these code communities for sure.
Right, exactly. I'm freelancing as a software engineer for No
Nice,
Whiteboard, and
nice,
we have gathered, just some surveys. That's our own way of like open sourcing, to
sure,
try how to improvise things. And I do think, going back to what you have said, that people can criticize you without even, knowing really like much about you. I
right,
think maybe it's like easier to criticize as as an audience member than like as a player, kind of like as in sports, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean, like I don't know anything much about like football, but I could, you know, yell like, oh, I could have like, thrown that ball
yeah,
better, or like caught that ball better, whatever. But I
yeah,
am not
absolutely.
playing. I'm not like, I'm not the one getting paid to play. And yeah, I'm not the professional.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It is kind of funny, and it's I tell anybody who's looking at getting into open source or just even some of our own community managers and stuff that it's the internet in the end, and the internet is kind of a wild west place of personalities and peoples and stuff, and a lot of great things on the internet, also a lot of rough edges. So going into it, I think with good expectations and good kind of direction of what you want to accomplish is really important. Like I would not encourage anybody to drop into an open source code base, open an issue, and say, I'm going to rewrite this whole dang thing in Rust or something because I love Rust and it's amazing and it's so fast. You're going to get laughed away, if not banned. So, what I tell people usually with open source is it's all the community. It's all about community. So you got to kind of ingrain yourself into the community. Like let's take Kubernetes for example.
Mhm.
Kubernetes is huge and it's really daunting to get involved. But there's a lot of these special interest groups called SIGs, or these community meetings. There's a lot of these outreach ways that people can start to get involved and start learning about how to contribute, start actually being a part of the conversation. And that's really the first step. The first step is almost never that you're going to contribute code. Usually the first step is that you get involved in the community, that you start actually chatting with people using the thing. You start using the thing yourself, right? It would be very, very hard for anybody to just drop in somewhere to some code base and be like, make a meaningful contribution. You got to get involved in the community. You got to actually add to the conversation. You actually got to, be a part of those people working and doing the thing, the stuff, right? You can almost think of it like Twitter communities. Like, I think anybody would have a really hard time just dropping into Twitter or a social media space and saying like, I am here, I am providing value. Like, great. You really got to like be part of the conversation, interacting with people and chatting with people before you can actually, bring that value, if that makes sense. So be a
Right,
part of the
right.
community. That's my first bit of advice for open
Right.
sourcers.
Okay, so speaking of communities, that's a really good point into transitioning from one career to another, such as software engineering.
Hmm.
What was one of the first communities that you joined and that, empowered you throughout your
Yeah.
journey?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, so when I was making kind of the switch, it was a weird time, even in 2015, 2016 ish. Gosh, it feels like so long ago now. There weren't like in-person boot camps in Denver, Colorado, where I'm at,
Right,
and
right.
I remember just kind of feeling lost and being like, what do I do? Like I knew I wanted to make this career transition, and I knew that I wanted some kind of structuring around it. So I was pretty discouraged because I was like, well, I could do a boot camp, but I'm not gonna. There weren't even a lot of like online ones. Like the wealth of resources today is I mean 5x what it was even 5-10 years ago when I was thinking about this, and I remember though getting very involved in Free Code Camp, freecodecamp.org, and I thought that community was just awesome. Like at the time they had like a forum. You know, I don't know if people are still using forums, but there was a forum, and I was posting on the forum and chatting with people on there. And, you know, that was just a fun way to like really get started, because, you know, you could talk with, you know, people and get involved in those communities, just talking about like the little like algorithm challenges that are on there. Not even like these giant assignments, but, you know, just being like, hey, I'm kind of confused how this, you know, JavaScript method works. Like what the hell, right? So that was like one of the first communities I got involved with. I then started doing CS50, which is Harvard's like open courseware intro to computer
Mm-hmm.
science class. And I loved that. And they also have like, you know, forums and chats and stuff. And I was involved there. I was kind of at this point where I was like, I really want to dive in deep. I really want to like go full in. I'm going to do this. There's not a boot camp, so what do I do? But I found a program uh,
Okay. Yes.
through, yeah. So I found a program through Oregon State University,
Mm-hmm.
which has this like, they call it a post-baccalaureate program where,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I basically didn't have to take, you know, freshman English again,
Right, right.
which was very nice. And uh, I got very, very involved with that, like doing school, being involved in classes. There were obviously the like, you know, class forums and chats and stuff. But that community actually had kind of rallied around itself and created its own Slack community,
Okay.
um, which you needed like an OregonState.edu email address, you know, be enrolled basically in the program to even join it. So it was just awesome. Like it, and I was very heavily involved in that for years. And I still sometimes even pop in there just to chat with like old friends and stuff. Those communities can be really, really impactful. Just to encourage, just to like help you kind of along your way, give you legitimate like technical advice, or, you know, help you like, you know, rubber duck a problem or something. Um, yeah, or even just having the camaraderie of being like, we're in the same class together. This
Right. Going through the same struggle.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so with that, I know the communities have been very helpful, but were there any like internal challenges you went through? Like how I know a lot, you know, I myself and other people that I know go through their own periods of imposter syndrome. How did you ever overcome that?
Mm, yeah, that's a good question. I think everybody deals with imposter syndrome. You know, I even deal with imposter syndrome still. I think it's just something you get better at, kind of talking yourself down. And you know, as your experience grows and as you really kind of grow your personal, I guess, portfolio, you know, in your mind's eye of like what you've been doing, you get a little better at saying like, no, I'm not an imposter. You know, I did X, I did, you know, XYZ, I did this and that. And, um, you know, I think only really recently, the last like year or two, have I been like feeling pretty comfortable. And, you know, I've been in tech for a little bit now, right?
Okay.
So everybody deals with imposter syndrome. And I think you're going to deal with a lot of that starting out,
Mhm.
especially as you start to like build heuristics and ideas in your mind about like how this stuff works. You know, like those very fundamental building blocks, like you know, I heard from a lot of people who were doing 100 devs. It was kind of the beginning of the JavaScript module, and a lot of them were just having a really hard time, and that's 100% understandable. Humans were never meant to think as literally as computers do, and when you program a computer, you gotta shift your mind into that mindset. Thankfully, there's a lot of these like, you know, common ideas, like very common ideas that get used all over the dang place, like a function. Like
Mhm.
functions are used everywhere in almost every programming language. But when
Right.
you first learn it, it's like what is this? What is this crazy thing? It's like, what is this function? How is it? You know, it's returning something like, you know, and that's just not something people have had to like build a concept in their mind about before. So you're going to deal
Mhm.
with a lot of this kind of like, wow, I suck because I can't wrap my head around this. You got to give yourself grace. You got to be like okay with uh, kind of sucking for a little bit and like building those fundamental building blocks that then get used like all over the place all the time, right? Um, yeah, so I definitely remember dealing with that and kind of in the beginning feeling um, a lot of this also kind of like what am I doing with my life?
Right.
And if that's
Mhm.
like I, you know, I went and got this, you know, 4-year nursing degree, And yeah, that was useful. It was good. I got burned out, and I was building a nursing career, and I kind of felt like I was starting over, and I was like resetting back to square one, which I did, and I knew in the end was going to be fine. I knew I was going to be able to find a job, but those like 2-3-ish years when I was in school doing the switch was it was a lot. It was a lot of having to remind myself that like it would be worth it. And I don't honestly, I don't know if I would have also been able to do it if I hadn't like fallen in love with tech as much as I had, if that makes sense. Like it was almost like a passion that I was like doing this. It was like, how could I not? Like I want to, start being a dork and a nerd so much, and like
Yeah.
programming, and I was doing it on the weekends and stuff, and just having a blast. And I remember one of the first websites I built was this dating website for Frodo Baggins, which I thought was
Oh
so
my
funny.
goodness.
I thought
Okay.
I was like, I'm hilarious. I'm so funny. It was so bad. It had this like neon pink, like, I don't know. I was basically just trying out CSS. I had no idea what I
Okay.
was doing. Um, I remember feeling so good and so proud of myself, being like, from nothing, it came this stupid website, and forth I have created.
Yes,
And,
exactly. It's just cool making an idea come
yeah,
to life. Like you birth something.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, exactly. I had something in my mind, but so you said you had a dating site, and so like how was the experience of making your first projects like, and making your portfolio? I know a lot of 100 devs people are kind of going through that right now, and
Yeah.
maybe people that are coming out of boot camp. What advice would you give them?
That's a great question. So I guess I had a little different experience than maybe I would have trying to break into tech on my own, or because I had a whole like stack of things from school that I ended up with as well. The first few things I made out of like free code camp were just not good. Like honestly, I look back on some of those and it was just kind of spaghetti code, and that's fine. Like that's something I've reminded people before in coffee chats, is that the first things you're going to make are just not going to be good, and that is just a-okay. Like you have to make some bad things and some blunders. Nobody is going from 0 to 100 right away.
Right,
You
real
gotta
quick.
go. Yeah, exactly. You gotta go 0 to 20, 20 to 40. Then you might be hitting maybe a passing grade, and then you're going to be past an A++ before you know it. And that in itself can be kind of discouraging, because you kind of can recognize, like, we all are people of the digital age. We all are people who understand almost intuitively good UI, good UX, like just when something feels good from a technology perspective. So it can feel kind of crummy when you're like, I made this thing and I feel in my gut that it just kind of stinks. Like, oh, it's just not like a good feeling. That's hard because a lot of these giant companies, Google, Facebook, whatever, have massive teams building really, really beautiful UI, UXs, and making just like these incredible products that then you kind of start to compare your little web app thing to. You can't do that. That is
Sure.
just unfair to yourself,
Kat
right?
on Twitch just mentioned that she's writing endless spaghetti code herself, so that alone made her feel better.
That's, yeah. I mean, you gotta make spaghetti before you make your piece de resistance. Remember that. Like, it's okay to start at 0. You got to start somewhere. Another thing I tell people all the dang time is Rome was not built in a day, or even a weekend, or even a year. Like, it took me a long time before I got my first like quote unquote real programming job. And in between all that was a lot of assignments, a lot of like just learning projects and things. And all that to say, don't shortchange yourself. Like, feel okay, like getting an idea and just kind of going for it and like making a thing. Like I mentioned this Vim plugin I'm working on. I do not write Lua. I don't know Lua. I'm just kind of like going for it. And I know that it's not good. It's not good code right now because I don't know the programming language. And that's okay. I know that in time it'll be fine, and in time it'll like maybe like kind of start to form from itself. So if you have an idea, don't feel like, oh, like I don't know this thing yet. Maybe I need to like do some more tutorials. Be okay with yourself writing a little spaghetti and maybe, failing a little bit. You're going to fail forward, and that's good. Like failing forward is what you got to do to start, building a bit of a portfolio. So that's like the very beginning, I would say. There is kind of a middle and an end to all that, where you maybe have a few really good ideas, a few things that you've put a lot of time into. Those are the things that you want to put into a portfolio. Like I think on my GitHub, I have like 200 repos or something stupid like that. I mean, most of them are abandoned. Most of them are spaghetti, honestly. But all of them were ideas that I was interested in one time and learned something from. And a few of them were good enough to get me a job. And
Okay.
I think that's really important. Is like, I mean, I'm a big fan of just like, hacking away. Like you're just gonna go for it. And the great thing about code is you can throw it away, and it's so easy to throw it away. It's so easy to throw away. That's one of the beautiful things about just software engineering and computer science in general, is it's a little different from other engineering fields where we have the ability to do that. Like you can't, like structural engineers can't really throw away a bridge.
Right.
That's a bad idea, because it would cost a lot of money. And but they also don't just have an idea over a weekend where they're like, I'm going to build a bridge like this. That would be costly, really hard to do.
There's a lot of logistics involved.
A lot of logistics. Yep. So be okay having those ideas. Be okay writing a bit of spaghetti code in the beginning. You're just going to write some, junk, and that's fine, especially when you're starting out. Like I remember a few of the first assignments I wrote in school were just not good either. It was some C++ stuff, and it was gross. You're going to have some good ideas that then can turn into some major projects, or even, a few things that you just put more time into. And that, time really in this field does equal better quality. If you just spend an insane amount of time on one thing, that one thing is probably going to be really, really great. So you're going to end up with a few things after enough time and energy, and yeah, you go from there, and it'll be okay. I'll say one last thing about portfolios.
Sure.
You do want to set yourself aside in some way. A lot of people come out of school or boot camps with kind of the same like cookie cutter things that everybody came out of school and boot camps with, like
the calculator app.
The calculator app, yeah, all that stuff is valid and great, but you got to remember that people like me who are looking at resumes are never going to be like, oh wow, like another calculator app. And that's okay. Like I don't know if it's not bad. It's not like, you're going to get points taken away for that. But I will say that you can set yourself aside by having a unique and interesting project, a unique and interesting idea or maybe you did something unique and interesting within your calculator app, and you can call that out. I think that is a good way to set yourself aside and get yourself really kind of to the next level of recruiting and stuff. So that's what I'll say. I think that's pretty common advice as far as like resumes and portfolios go.
Yeah, it's really good advice. I hope everyone got some key pointers from that. And so you mentioned that you look at resumes and portfolios as well. What are a couple of things that have stood out in the past couple of years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm a bit biased just with the open source. I do think that anytime I see major open source contributions on a resume, that's killer on a resume, in my opinion. Not only does it demonstrate that you know how to work in a big open code base, it also demonstrates that you like know how to communicate within community, know how to like work within a large dynamic team potentially. And then there's obviously the code stuff, and I can go look at the code, and I can like kind of creep on what you did within that open source project. I just said, major open source project or, big open source code. It doesn't even have to be that big. It could be like, 2 or 3 pull requests to something that has, maybe a few users or something. And that's fine. That still demonstrates that you know how to do that, that you can do that you have done that. I love seeing open source contributions on a resume. I think in a little more meta perspective as well, I do think that that's where a lot of the industry is headed. Actually, is more things are going into the open source. So
Right.
it's a great skill to have going into any job, honestly. Um, another I love seeing like talks that you've done, or a lot of engineering roles are very like detail focused, and like you're writing code, and it's kind of this like um it's easy to evaluate, like, oh, do I like this code? Does it look good? Does it work? Does it have tests? Sure. But I love seeing if people are doing like talks, or like at conferences or something, because most of the time those are on YouTube. And then also there's a lot of like communication skills that you can pick up from watching somebody's talk. So that's I would say that's like definitely bonus points, definitely not required if for like your first role, honestly. Kind of a caveat to that, I look at a lot of like mid-ish role things. So like for a mid level, that's I think that would look awesome. I'm trying to put myself in the perspective of like what I would want from like a junior role. Um, if you have an
How did you
internship,
set yourself apart when you started
yeah,
amongst all your other competition?
yeah, I definitely think having an internship helps, which I was able to do an internship. I mean, God bless my wife. She's amazing. She basically put me through school, and then was
Mhm.
supporting us when I quit my nursing gig. So I was able to quit my nursing job, do an internship over the summer just before I graduated school, and then that actually turned into kind of a part-time-ish, a few hours a week contributing code kind of thing. Um, so yeah, having an internship looks great for a junior role. And yes, those types of internships do exist out there, and I think that you can even try to negotiate with, maybe more non-traditional kind of internships. Like one thing that I think Free Code Camp does, and I think 100 Devs does as well, is tries to get you to go out and like find a quote unquote client or something. You could do the same thing for an internship, even if it was just like 10 hours a week or something. Roll up to your current company, even be like, hey, I want to contribute some code to our engineering department. Here's something that people don't realize is that every company now is a tech company. Like no, like if they're not, they're sinking because of COVID and because of how everything went online so drastically in 2020. So if you're working a desk job right now or something, you could definitely try to figure out if there's an engineering department, if there's need in the engineering department, and if there's ways that you could start trying to contribute code. That's one avenue. There's definitely the like find a client, build a website for the local mom and pop shop down the road kind of thing. So yeah, I definitely think having that kind of experience on your resume looks great, because it's basically real experience. Like it's not your first job. The riskiest people in junior roles are the people who are the greenest, if that makes sense. And a good way to look at hiring is from a risk mitigation perspective.
Okay.
So we don't want to hire people that obviously aren't going to be able to deliver. Like
Makes sense.
delivering is king. It's
Mhm.
everything. Like if
Right.
you're shipping,
Idea. Yeah.
oh,
Mhm.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say idea is nothing if you don't even try to execute it.
Executing, exactly. Yeah, it's about executing. It's about getting stuff done. And we don't want to hire people that are gonna like um not be able to do that, but we also don't want to like put people in that situation. Like it's just unfair of us. Like I would hate to bring somebody onto a team like and be like, okay, you are going to contribute, you're going to be responsible for like this thing, this Kubernetes thing, this and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what the cloud is, or I like am. That would just be unfair of us, right?
Right.
We want to set people up for success, right? So it reduces our risk of not being able to deliver. It also reduces your risk of having a crappy job.
Right.
So yeah, you want to reduce your risk as much as possible of like being perceived that way, right? So having real experience, having real technical experience looks incredible, because it's like, oh, well, this person has held down a job before. They they built a client product. They they did some code at their current job. They went out and found some freelance work or something. Like that's rock solid. That's great for a junior role. Yeah, I think also having like an interesting technical like thing that you did that is like pretty specific to the role you're applying to also looks really good. And that can be
Okay.
challenging as well. But I have heard of people who are like, oh, this company does a lot in, Cloud Foundry or
Uh-huh.
Kubernetes or in Linux or something. And they go make a contribution or like, I even had somebody who was interviewing for an intern role, and they made a
Mhm.
presentation on our product, and they had like deployed it and like ran it and had like feedback points for us. It was incredible.
Oh my goodness.
That interview was above and beyond, honestly.
Hired right away on the spot.
I mean, not on the spot, but yeah, I mean, pretty much. It was, yeah. I mean, that's just super extra, and like being super extra is great when you're interviewing.
Right,
um,
right.
so yeah.
And he asked, like, did he actually get hired?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean,
Fantastic.
it was just awesome. I mean, it was clear that that person would take initiative. It was clear that they like, I mean, like how can you not really? So yeah, I mean, if you, I've actually had that happen a few times before. I'd interviewed somebody for a like a developer relations like community management role, so kind of somewhere between doing like outreach, but also like real dev work. Somewhere
Right.
kind of in between there, or
Uh-huh.
like kind of like a solutions engineering role. So
Uh-huh.
doing some engineering. They built a solution, like they built a solution guide for our product and presented it in the interview, and I was just flabbergasted. And this was for like a senior role, and I was like, this is stuff we want. We want to hire you. This is great, right?
Right.
So that kind of thing can actually be really great in an interview, and I think can. I mean, you're being very specific. You're being very like targeted for the job that you've applied for, and can just be, yeah, great, honestly, for
Makes
that role.
sense.
Yeah,
Exactly. So everyone try to just outshine yourself. Just, go hard.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of memes also that say like, I'm a web developer and I can make an idea come to life, but and then like another image it shows like Buzz Lightyear saying that like it's just the same thing. There's so many other people that, want the job, but how can you really stand out, Because I'm sure um a lot of the friends that I know in the tech Twitter community,
hmm
it's hard for them to get their first job. But then when they get their
yeah,
first job, they're at ease. Everything comes
yeah.
easy way after that.
Yeah, there's the industry is in a really it's in a really tricky position right now because of what happened in 2020. Like I said, like yes, every company became a tech company. Yes, every company had to go online and had to like build some technology just to like
Right.
be accessible even during the
Mhm.
pandemic. And that continues today, right? Like the companies are pushing more and more into technology because it was clear that it just became the future. It accelerated our future into technology. So what happened was the kind of industry expanded, which meant that people in the middle kind of moved up. People who moved up really moved up, and that left
Right.
this like big gap in the middle. Basically, I'm talking about like mid-level engineers,
Mhm.
um, and it it creates kind of a void within it, this is very like meta industry conversation, but it kind of creates a void in the middle. But like the junior engineer roles aren't like there's not as many junior engineer roles because of kind of that delivery risk and perception that I was talking about. Like most teams are delivering the most things usually with a like pretty thick stack of like mid-level engineers.
Okay.
So like the most like in my opinion, at least, and this is purely my opinion, the most beautiful team is like maybe a senior, a staff engineer, like somewhere kind of up there, like one or two of those people, three or four or five mid-level engineers, and then one or two junior engineers who are being enabled by the whole team, essentially.
Right.
And honestly, depending on the product as well. Like maybe some teams can flex more junior engineers. Maybe it needs like more people actually like delivering a ton of stuff, so they would flex into the like mid-level engineers. Um, a problem can become when there's like one staff engineer and then like six junior engineers. That team would be at a huge risk of not being able to deliver and ship products because I don't know how one staff engineer can enable that many juniors, right? It just would not scale. Like in my opinion, junior engineers need a lot of enablement and a lot, and that's not a bad thing. Like, man, I got this when I was a junior engineer. I was poured into by like 7 different people. It was awesome. I got to level up and grow really, really quickly. And the reason for that also is because there's so many industry tools. Every company has their own little like kind of crazy nitpicky process. There's release engineering, there's testing, like there's all these other things that you just will not learn about until your first job. So you need a lot of enablement as a junior engineer, and that's great. All that to say is that there's a big gap in the middle because all those mid people during like this kind of industry flex moved up. But they weren't going to hire all these junior engineers to fill that mid gap, because then you end up with these teams who have like 1 staff engineer and like 10 juniors, and that would be super risky. So there's a huge movement across the industry to hire these people who deliver in the middle, which is why it's so hard right now to get your first junior engineering role. All that to say, yeah, that's how you get, that's the problem is really what it is. So breaking in, that means, in my opinion, that to break in, you need to show that you deliver. That what we were just talking about with like an internship, or even like a client project that you go out and find, like your mom and pop shop or something, or I know you got to deliver something real is all that to say. If I were looking at a junior engineer resume and I saw that they delivered like something actually, like, and not just like a calculator app, but like maybe if you like built and delivered your own like SaaS service product or something, like holy crap, like at that point you're a mid-level engineer, right? You've surpassed a junior role, right? And I've seen people do that on tech Twitter and stuff, and that is a feat. That is like an accomplishment of like Herculean effort, right? Like I don't want to run and manage and build my own SaaS service. That's crazy. That's a lot of work. All that to say, no, I'm not saying you have to do that, but there's a lot of ways you can deliver. Maybe building your own SaaS service is like the most extreme thing. One thing I can think of is contributing into the open source. You're delivering real code there that gets shipped into actual releases of actual open source things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, the Buzz Lightyear meme. Like you just can't do the cookie cutter anymore. Like I think, I don't even think that's worked. I don't even think that would have worked really very well for like me 4 or 5 years ago. Like, I think really the cookie cutter kind of template of people coming out of a computer science degree probably worked really well before boot camps were a thing. And that is funny from an industry perspective, because boot camps actually saw a huge need for juniors in the bottom. So they were like, oh, we can really capitalize on this and, create a program that will, get people into the industry faster to fill those lower junior roles. Because after the .com bubble burst, there wasn't a lot of people going into the tech industry. Tech companies weren't really like flexing their tech products, right? Because there was this huge crash.
Right.
So there were a lot of people kind of stuck in the middle, which left, a ton of junior roles to be filled. So, that was a long kind of expletive on,
No, totally understandable. I mean, earlier in our conversation, you mentioned how an accountant could definitely leverage their background into software engineering.
Yeah.
And all I'm thinking about is the bottom line, right? Like, there's a lot of tech. It's good to, I think at the end of the day, as you mentioned, that every company now is shifting into becoming a tech company, and also at the end of the day, it's still a company. A company needs money to survive. And if like understanding the bottom line, understanding risk mitigation, understanding like, assessment, room assessment, all of these holistic things add value. So
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it as well, is, like you don't want to be somebody who's a risk to the bottom line coming into a team,
right.
and they do evaluate that, especially for junior roles.
Right.
I'll say one last thing on this topic. I think really what I'm getting at kind of the heart of it is you need to really become a technologist. You need to be somebody who isn't just like pumping out some cookie cutter projects from, some tutorials you found that everybody might have, or, your boot camp or your CS degree. Like everybody in a CS degree writes a shell like in their operating system class, and it's hilarious when I see that on a resume, because I put that on my resume. I'm like, oh, that was on my resume like 4 or 5 years
It
ago.
takes
Wow.
one to know one.
Yeah, exactly. So, um, I think though, like looking back on my experience, what actually one thing that set me apart a bit is I got really interested and curious about Slack automation, and I actually built a few Slack bots for that Oregon State community that I was in on Slack, and it was the silliest thing. One of them was called Emoji Bot, and it just would post to a channel when somebody added a new emoji to the Slack, and it would also keep like a score tracker of who was like uploading the most emojis, and it became like a whole thing in the community where people were like, oh yeah, like Sarah just uploaded this hilarious emoji, like look at it. And I think this was before even really Discord was big, and I think Discord even has that kind of functionality built in now. So
Yeah, emojis are a thing. Emojis are huge.
oh, the emoji meta. Yeah. I put that on my resume, and I got asked about it, and people loved it. And they were like, wow, that's an interesting idea. Like I've never considered that. How did it scale? Because this was a community of a couple thousand people, I think. So this thing actually did have to scale with people, posting emojis, keeping track of who was uploading and reacting to emojis, all interacting with the Slack APIs, which had their own nuances and things. Right. So I was interested in the Slack technology, and I kind of became a Slack technologist in itself. And that became an interesting story to tell in interviews, and was a legitimate quote unquote product that I maintained for a couple years, and also then open source, and people were contributing back. Right. So this became like a whole thing. This stupid idea I had to scale. This stupid idea I had became a community project. This stupid idea I had got me a job. I would like to say.
Amazing.
So I do think that there's a lot to be said about setting yourself apart a bit, becoming a technologist, being really curious and interested about something, and then this is something I think even I told you in our coffee chat, and I tell everyone all the time is pull on the threads of your curiosity. Your curiosity is an incredibly powerful tool.
Yes.
To motivate you and push you into something, and that could be a stupid idea. I was just so curious about doing this stupid thing, and I was just like, how would I do this in Slack? Like, oh, Slack has an API. Continue to pull on that thread. Oh, Slack has an emojis API. Wow, like pulling on that thread, right? So use your curiosity to your benefit.
It can just like form a web of so many other subtopics, and that could maybe be a beautiful thing that could land you your first job. So with the curiosity thing, that's a really interesting topic, because I actually, there's certain shows that made me curious, that enlightened my curiosity into technology, like Black Mirror. Were there any shows that you were interested in that, you're like, oh, they did a really cool and fascinating thing, I want to do that, even though it's, just in the media, it's probably fake.
I think of two. I really loved Mr. Robot, which is not so much programming, but kind of hacking and cybersecurity and stuff. And I think a lot of people watch that show and they're just like, oh, that is crazy. And the fun thing about that show is a lot of that stuff is actually pretty accurate. Like they definitely embellish some of the, crazy, but for the most part, a lot of the hacks that they do and happen are real. So I wouldn't call myself a cybersecurity professional, but I definitely have, let that curiosity pull me in different directions with cybersecurity stuff. I remember, I'm going to date myself, the movie War Games, where it's like an 80s movie.
Okay.
And it's another kind of like classic hacker movie where, the guy like hacks into the United States government and almost starts like World War III, and he's like playing a war game, quote unquote, with this like AI computer, and it's like, would you like to play a game? And it's like launching nukes at each other and stuff, and the United States government thinks it's like real. So all that, I remember watching that movie as a kid and being like, oh, that's so funny, it's so crazy. Like you could do that with a computer. And, I remember, way back when, even getting interested in kind of being like, oh, I want to like, do some tech stuff after seeing like that movie. There was another, I forget what it was, like Hacker or something. There was another like 80s movie I had seen that was all like kind of classic hacker 80s movie. And I remember going on MySpace and like changing a bunch of my like like my background.
Layout code.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember like changing one thing, like the background color, and being like, I'm a hacker.
Right. MySpace just started at all.
Yeah.
I started coding with MySpace, and
Excellent. Yeah.
I was really, really disappointed. Sorry, that Facebook became mainstream, because that meant that it wasn't cool to like make my layouts anymore and like add different like music, or put like marquee with my images so they can have a slideshow. And like, shit, sorry.
Exactly.
I'm so sorry for cussing, but
I don't care.
but this is so cool, and I know like it's through a 13-year-old lens, but that was really fun for me. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to conform to the layout of Facebook.
Right.
Cool.
And there's a whole generation of web devs who got started on MySpace, and like, wow, that's crazy. And like Tumblr, I think, was another one where I was never on Tumblr, but that was another one of those that you could just like, oh, I'm going to change the code of my Tumblr page. And I know a lot of people who did that. And yeah, I mean, even for people like, and this is a bit of an aside, I think learning even just the little bit of technology and, a little bit of HTML, CSS, JavaScript goes so far. And I think is like an incredibly good skill to have going into, the next, 20 something years, as things only continue to like blow up. So, for people like learning and just, feeling discouraged about what they're learning, or maybe not moving as fast, even the little bit that you've learned is already incredibly valuable.
Yes, exactly. Keegan just mentioned that she liked changing her layout on Tumblr when she was younger. So I feel like there should be more advances in technology, maybe in like social media platforms, that allows people to manipulate the code to make it cool, to code. Because I feel like there's certain stigmas around different like spaces that it's only for like the nerds, but you can be a multidimensional person, but still also be a nerd. So we mentioned media, and I know we have like only 8 minutes left. So I want to highlight that you have a YouTube channel, right? So
sure.
And then, so how did you get started on that? And what do you hope to get out of, being a part of that space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. It was kind of a pandemic, like, I'm stuck at home, what am I going to do? Kind of thing. And I'd also made a TikTok, which I don't post too much there anymore, but
you dance?
I did not dance. No. Oh, there's a whole realm of technologists on TikTok. I'll tell you what, like, VS Code actually has a really fantastic TikTok, which I think is a lot of fun. They share a lot of really cool things about what's happening in that ecosystem. I don't know. What do I hope to get out of it? Still to be determined. I'm not sure. It's kind of ever evolving, it seems like. I like, I do like kind of the ideas and like art, the almost art of, creating a video. I don't know if I would call what I do filmmaking, but, I think at my core, I just really do love like creating stuff. And I really like the kind of thought work of creating like thought things, right? So making a video about an interesting topic or an interesting technology thing, it's just a lot of fun. And
right. It's just fascinating making an idea come to life.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that we live in this age, and then that's, we're gonna keep living in the certain age where we consume so much, and then maybe there are people that think that, oh, you have to be a professional or have XYZ technology or like this amount of money to create something. But with software engineering, you can just start off with free code camp or 100 devs, which is also free. Right. And that giving you the biggest ROI in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So any other last tips that you want to give to the audience? And this will be recorded. Any last tips for career changers? Like, since you have been a successful one yourself?
Yeah. I'll yeah, I'll give one. You know, and I think this is kind of summing up a lot of my thoughts and ideas. And looking back, I could have very easily burned myself out again making this career transition. I think really the only thing that kind of saved me was the fact that I had, you know, such a massive support system from my wife, family, and friends, that I was like already really passionate about what I was doing, and that I had the flexibility at work to like, you know, do night shifts basically, and then, you know, have all, you know, this time off to do school and stuff. I definitely realize that's not the like case for most people. Um, so be very, very gracious to yourself. Be very, very gracious to yourself and give yourself the time that you need. Like you're not like, I would say it'd be abnormal for most people to go through this transition in even 6 months. Like it's a long road. It's a journey. And, you know, if this is a career that you're going to be having for the next, you know, 20, 30 years or so, that is a small amount of time to give up, you know, in order to learn those skills well and make that transition well, right? It's really hard. Like it's just a lot. Like you're not only going to be like learning all these new things, learning all these crazy, you know, concepts in your mind about, you know, how the magic of computers work, but you're
Right.
also like probably going to be dealing with some like self-doubt.
Right.
You know, for people maybe a little later in their 20s or 30s or something, you might be, you know, dealing with like bills and stuff and legitimate like have like life responsibilities to keep up with. So you really got to be careful and watch yourself, and not let yourself like kind of fall into a like pit of despair around like, oh, like I'm not going fast enough, or I'm not like I want to make this transition, you know, in a month or something. I met up with this person who, they had found me on YouTube, and they're also a nurse, and um, I really cautioned them against like some of the like things they were saying. They were like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna like make this. I think I'm gonna quit my job in like a month," and
Okay.
I was like, with like zero support system, and I was like, you really gotta like slow down. Like you, can't,
Mhm.
you're gonna put yourself in a dangerous situation,
Mhm.
just from like, you know, paying bills perspective. And
Right.
I told them, I was like, I just don't think like you're gonna be able to get a job after just a month of doing online tutorials and stuff. Like I just don't think that's possible. Um, you know, and that's maybe some people would see that as like being too discouraging and stuff, but I want to set you up for success in the long run. I want you to learn
Right.
skills well. I want you to, you know, not get to the end of this career transition being re-burned out, right? Which
Mhm.
I feel like I was very close to, because I was doing basically like 16, 18 credits. I was working my night shift job. I was also still trying to like, you know, be a good husband,
Yeah, of
and like
course.
a good friend and stuff. I
Mhm.
then also picked up an internship. I then was also studying like all the, you know, for leak code and stuff towards the end of it. Um, so I feel like I could have very easily gotten to the end of this like journey for myself and gotten my first job and just been like, I hate this. I'm tired. Right.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So be very cautious. I think like be gracious to yourself. Take the time that you need.
All right. I hope everyone got some key insights from this talk with John today. Thank you so much, John, for taking your time to talk with Pathlight. I hope you have a good day, and the recording will be out next week. Thank you so much. Have a good
Awesome.
day.
Yeah. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Mia. Bye.
Thank you, John.